Eleanor could not believe that her late mother had divided her fortune among every single member of the family, except for her. All she got was an old, worthless stone that might have had some sentimental value at most. But Eleanor still decided to bring it to a jeweler to see if there was something she could get for it. But she was completely caught off guard by the reaction of said jeweler. Upon seeing the strange stone, the jeweler had taken it into the back of the store and not yet returned with it. Eleanor was getting nervous. What could be taking so long? Did the man understand that she was trying to sell him something worthless? But then, the man returned. The look in his eyes was stern and angry, and he was clearly empty-handed. But before Eleanor could ask where her stone was, the jeweler slammed his fist on the table and looked her straight in the eyes. "You are not supposed to have this," he said to her. Only when the jeweler explained what this stone actually was did Eleanor understand the severity of this situation. She'd made a very big mistake coming here. But what was going on with this strange stone? Why did her mother leave her only this one object, and why was Eleanor not even supposed to have it? The passing of Eleanor's mother, Maria, came out of nowhere for the family. Not a single one of them had any idea that the old woman was sick, which in itself was not that weird, as Maria had always been a very private and secretive person. And that is what she would remain even in death. Even though nobody in the family knew about Maria's impending passing, the old woman herself was clearly very aware that her end was quickly approaching. The family was told that she had changed her will only a week ago and documented what she wanted to have done with her body after her death. All the family needed to was show up to the funeral, which had all been arranged and paid for already. It was a very strange day for everybody, especially for Eleanor. She felt horrible that she had no idea what had been going on with her mother. She should have talked to her more often. But the day only got stranger from that point onwards, as the will was going to be read only an hour after the funeral had concluded. The family felt like this was only a formality, but it would turn out to be anything but, as Maria had some big surprises in store for everybody. Seeing as Eleanor was Maria's only daughter, and she was not in contact with her ex-husband anymore, it would only make sense if everything went to her. But the fact that nearly everybody was called up by the executor of the will started to raise some eyebrows. When the executor started to read the will, people's mouths fell open, and every single person was surprised. Maria did not have that much money, but she had apparently decided to share everything equally with every family member mentioned in the will. The only one present there that day who was not getting a share of the money was Eleanor, and she could not understand. It was not like she was dying to get this money, as she would much rather have her mother back, but she was mostly worried about the reason for this decision. What did her mother think of her when she was set to pass away? Did she do something that made her feel some type of way? Or was she angry about the lack of interest Eleanor showed? The executor could not answer these questions, so Eleanor would most likely be left in the dark forever. But Eleanor was in fact mentioned in the will of her mother. There was something she was set to inherit, but it was probably the last thing she expected. The executor put a small package on the table and told Eleanor that she could only open it when she got home. No member of the family was supposed to see this. Eleanor was shocked, and the family was clearly curious as to what could be in there. They even tried to convince Eleanor to just open up the package and disregard her mother's wishes. The old lady clearly had not cared about her anyway, since she left her daughter not a penny, but there was no part of Eleanor that wanted to do that. She quickly signed for the inheritance and then quickly went home. She knew that the family would probably keep asking her what the hell she had gotten, but they were much easier to ignore when they didn't ask her in person. In the car ride home, Eleanor could barely contain her own curiosity. This whole day, and you could even say this whole week, had been so strange, and this mystery package was the cherry on top of the cake. What the hell had her late mother been planning in her last couple of days on this planet? When Eleanor finally made her way home, she did not waste a second to open up the strange package. And when she saw what was inside, she got a sense of confusion and recognition at the same time. But she did know that she had seen this object before, and also knew where. In the package, there was a strangely red stone. And Eleanor recognized it because when she was younger, this stone was always on her mother's nightstand. But Maria had never explained to her what kind of stone it was or why she kept it so close. All she was ever really told about it was that it was not valuable or something. It was no crystal or other rare stone kind. So Eleanor had always assumed that it just had sentimental value to her mother or something like that. But seeing as she made such a big deal about leaving this to her, there had to be something more to it. But sadly, that was no note or anything in the package that could give Eleanor more information about the stone or what she was supposed to do with it. And Eleanor was kind of stuck at that point for a while, unsure of what she was supposed to do with her inheritance, if anything at all. She did not want to ask the family for advice, even though they really wanted to know what she had gotten in the package. Her mother had not wanted them to know about the stone, and so asking them about it was not an option. She had put the stone on her nightstand, and it stayed there for 2 years straight. And in that time, a lot changed in Eleanor's life. But sadly, not for the better. In this period, Eleanor saw her life completely fall apart, mostly in a financial sense. When she did not get any money from her mother's inheritance, she did not mind it as much as she was doing relatively well for herself. But since then, she had been fired from her job, unable to find a new one, had blown through all her savings, and had even gotten herself into debt to make ends meet. And because of all this, she had also slowly started to resent her mother more and more for not giving her the inheritance. It was not her fault that she was a closed, bitter woman. She had done nothing wrong and should have gotten what she was owed. This was a frustration that she did discuss with the family, and even though they understood her situation, none of them were willing to give her some of their inheritance money. Just like she had not been willing to share what was in the package, were they also unwilling to go against Maria's wishes in the will. And this conversation got Eleanor thinking about the stone again, that stupid, worthless piece of rock. She could not even look at it anymore without getting angry because it represented her mother's unfair decision. She had half a mind to just throw the rock into the trash, but considering the dire financial Eleanor found herself in, she decided that she was instead going to bring it to a jewelry store. She knew that it was not worth much, but maybe the jeweler had no idea and was willing to buy it from her. It seemed like a plan doomed to fail. But what did Eleanor have to lose? If nobody wanted to buy it, she could still just throw it away, and all she would have wasted was a day, which she would probably otherwise have spent responding to job applications that would not get back to her anyway. And so, Eleanor carefully packed in the store and drove to the nearest jewelry store. She had actually already mapped all 5 stores in the area in the hopes that she could find one that would give her something for the stone. She just hoped they would not see how desperate she was, and her journey did not start off well. The first store told her that they were not interested in buying non-graded stone and did not even want to see it. And the second store was willing to inspect the stone, but determined that it was not worth their time or effort. Eleanor held the stone tightly in her hand, its rough texture grounding her thoughts. A gift from her mother, it now represented her only way out of financial distress. Taking a deep breath, Eleanor was determined to find a buyer, no matter the emotional cost. With hope in her heart, Eleanor approached the third jeweler, hoping he'd see the stone's worth. But after a cursory glance, he barely blinked an eye, dismissing its value with a simple shake of his head. The weight of his disinterest was palpable and heavy. Outside, frustration welled up within Eleanor. She sat on a nearby bench, reminiscing about her mother, the gentle way she'd laugh, her comforting embrace, and the stories she'd tell about the stone. Eleanor missed her guidance, especially now when she felt so lost. The sun dipped low, casting the city in a golden hue. One last store stood between her and complete hopelessness. Though she hesitated, memories of her mother's resilience propelled her forward. Taking a tentative step, Eleanor decided to give it one more shot. The last jeweler's store was a relic in itself. Dimly lit with a musty air, it showcased pieces that spoke of history and timeless elegance. Grandfather clocks ticked in harmony, and the very walls whispered tales from the past. The atmosphere felt right, almost magical. Laying the stone on the counter, Eleanor looked expectantly at the old jeweler. His eyes, initially dismissive, quickly changed as he looked closer. There was a sudden spark, an inquisitiveness that wasn't there before. Had he seen something the others hadn't? Every moment the jeweler spent examining the stone made Eleanor's heart beat faster. His genuine interest, the way his fingers delicately turned it around, brought hope, flooding back. Maybe, just maybe, this was the break she so desperately needed. But as the seconds turned to minutes, a shadow seemed to cross the jeweler's face. His initial interest now mingled with a furrowed brow and pursed lips. What could possibly concern him so? Eleanor felt a lump forming in her throat. Eleanor tried to recall all her mother had said about the stone, its origin, its journey, its significance. Why was the jeweler so engrossed? Why so concerned? Doubt and anxiety gnawed at her, turning her hope into a storm of questions. In a move that caught Eleanor off guard, the jeweler suddenly stood up, leaving the stone behind. Without uttering a word, he walked briskly to the back of the store. Eleanor was left stunned, her worries peaking, alone with 1,000 unsaid words echoing around her. Eleanor's mind raced, connecting dots from her past. She recalled her mother's secretive glances, the hushed conversations, and the enigmatic stories surrounding the stone. Could there be a deeper, hidden history she wasn't aware of? Was her mother protecting her from a truth too complex? The door creaked open and the jeweler reappeared, his face pale. The initial curiosity in his eyes had now transformed into a mix of anger and fear. "What have you brought into my shop?" he whispered, hands trembling slightly. Before Eleanor could process his words, the sound of sirens grew closer, soon accompanied by the assertive footsteps of the police. Flashing lights streamed through the window blinds, painting the dim store in shades of blue and red. Officers stormed in, their presence immediately overwhelming the room. Eleanor's hands were swiftly cuffed, her pleas drowned out by the chaotic scene. Emotions swirled within her. Anger, confusion, and fear. Why was she being arrested? What had she done wrong? The police station felt cold and imposing. Harsh fluorescent lights illuminated drab gray walls, echoing distant, incoherent chatter. As Eleanor sat, the weight of her anxiety grew, coupled with regret. She wished she had never sought to sell the stone. Lost in her thoughts, Eleanor's mind drifted to happier times. Picnics with her mother, sunlit afternoons, and joyful laughter. She chastised herself for her current predicament. Why hadn't she asked more questions? Were the happy memories all based on a lie? Outside her holding cell, Eleanor noticed two officers. Their conversation, while muted, carried an intensity that was hard to miss. Their glances toward her holding area seemed to carry a mix of suspicion and curiosity. Inside the cold interrogation room, the officers wasted no time. "Where did you get this stone? What do you know about its origins?" Their stern faces awaited her reply. Eleanor, choked with emotion, began recounting her mother's last days and her final wish. Desperately, Eleanor conveyed the stone's sentimental value, how it was a cherished heirloom, and that she was ignorant of any darker history. Her voice quivered. "I only wanted to honor my mother's memory." The officers exchanged skeptical glances. They'd heard stories, tales, and alibis before. Eleanor's heart sank deeper, sensing their disbelief. Was the truth of the stone's origin about to shatter the memories of her mother? The despair grew, threatening to drown her. Maria, Eleanor's mother, always had an air of mystery surrounding her, and the stone was central to it. Eleanor recalled a distant evening where she overheard hushed conversations between Maria and an old friend. They spoke of the stone's grave importance, but young Eleanor, tucked away behind the curtains, couldn't grasp the full context. Only now did the pieces begin to fit. The officers, bearing stern expressions, left Eleanor alone in the interrogation room. They needed to cross-reference the details of her story with whatever they had on file. Eleanor's heart raced. Would they believe her? Would they find the truth she herself didn't know? Each passing second felt like an eternity. Locked away, Eleanor felt the weight of her potential fate. What if they couldn't verify her story? The dread of imprisonment loomed over her. Thoughts of being away from her life, her freedom, and the possibility of being trapped due to a mere heirloom were suffocating. A seasoned officer, seeing Eleanor's distress, sat down beside her. He began to share his family's story, eerily similar to Eleanor's, a relic passed down, its importance veiled in secrecy. The tale was a comfort, showing Eleanor she wasn't alone in her current predicament. In the quiet of her cell, Eleanor reflected on life's unpredictable nature. She thought of her normal, quiet life and how one stone had the power to upheave it all. It was a cruel twist of fate. How many times had she walked past that stone without realizing its potential for chaos? The heavy door creaked open, revealing the officers with a softer demeanor. They confirmed her story matched records from an old case. Eleanor's chest tightened with relief. She wasn't a criminal. She was just caught in the whirlwind of her family's history. Though cleared, Eleanor's thirst for knowledge had been ignited. She wanted answers. "What is this stone? Why did my mother have it?" she pressed. The officers exchanged glances, hesitant. The stone's story was far from ordinary. Eleanor was led to a room where high-ranking officials discussed the stone in hushed tones, careful to avoid revealing its true nature to her. Their mannerisms showed reverence and caution toward the artifact. Eleanor's curiosity only deepened. She felt both connected to and alienated from her own family heirloom. Soon it was decided. The stone needed expert eyes. Museum authorities were promptly contacted. Eleanor, eager for clarity, awaited the opportunity to meet those who could finally shed light on her mother's secretive treasure. At the museum, Eleanor was led to a secluded area, away from the general exhibits. There, under specialized lighting and security, the stone was displayed. It wasn't just a relic of her family, but seemed to be a fragment of history itself, too profound to be shared openly with the world. Officials huddled together, their voices a low murmur. They pointed and gestured at the stone, making notes, all while being careful not to reveal too much to Eleanor. Their secretive manner made the atmosphere even more tense, making Eleanor anxious. Just what was so special about her mother's heirloom? Eleanor paced her room that night, mind racing. The stone was her inheritance, wasn't it? She pondered seeking legal counsel. The right lawyer could help her reclaim it. While it held sentimental value, Eleanor also knew that its importance might translate to material value as well. When she approached the officials, they discussed the legal implications of her claim. The stone, it seemed, had historical and potentially national significance. An appraisal was in order to assess its exact value. The air was thick with talk of rights, precedents, and compensation. In her search for answers, Eleanor met an elderly historian who had known her mother. With a twinkle in his eye, he recalled Maria's passion for archaeology and revealed that she had discovered something monumental. The stone was a rare, invaluable fossil. Eleanor sat in shock. The fossil? That explained the whispers, the secrecy. Her mother had aimed to protect it, keeping it hidden until the world was ready, or perhaps until Eleanor herself was ready. Maria had hoped to secure Eleanor's future with this invaluable find. The authorities couldn't deprive Eleanor of her rightful inheritance. She was compensated handsomely, a sum that was enough to transform her life entirely. From the brink of financial ruin, she was now well off, all thanks to her mother's foresight. While the money was life-altering, Eleanor felt a responsibility. In honor of her mother, she decided to invest it wisely. She set up scholarships for aspiring archaeologists and funded research programs, ensuring her mother's passion lived on. Sitting in her renovated home, Eleanor mused over life's unexpected turns. The stone's journey, from the ground to her mother, then to her, and finally to the museum, was a testament to destiny and Maria's unyielding love. Everything had come full circle. Eleanor found herself at her mother's grave, the place where her journey with the stone began. Surrounded by the quiet hum of the cemetery, she whispered her thanks to Maria. The stone had brought turbulence, but ultimately it led her to understanding and prosperity. Kneeling down, Eleanor placed fresh lilies on the gravestone. The stone might be locked away in a museum, but its essence was with her. "Thank you, Mama," she murmured, tears of gratitude in her eyes. With the stone's mystery unraveled, Eleanor finally found her closure.